For
I just started it,
thank you.
so we're ready.
I'm Pat Whitlow with Office of Nationally Competitive Awards, and also on the call we have Emily Sally, who's also with Nationally Competitive Awards, and our alumni, Callie Brooks, who has very graciously agreed to do this with us. This is our first one, and so we're learning as we go. So thank you everybody who signed up for being patient with us. And I am sharing screen a little bit of a PowerPoint so that you have a couple of facts, and we will put this up later on our website or send people the link so that they have a link to the website for this award. And then Callie's also going to talk about her particular experience. Callie did this 2018-19, right, Callie?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So she spent her year in Spain, and then she was going to spend a full year on a Fulbright in Brazil, but her Fulbright actually started in January, and unfortunately world events have overtaken her, and she was required to come back to the US after only 5 weeks. So unfortunately her Fulbright got truncated, but when I was talking with her about that, she indicated to me that she's going to apply to go back to Spain. And because the deadline has been delayed to April 30th, I asked her if she would talk to other UK students who might be interested in this program. So I'll just go to our next slide. Oh, there, I did put, and this is, I should have put a photo credit to Callie, because her photograph. And is this the main square?
Yeah, so this is right walking into the main plaza in Lugo. Yes, I have a lot of pictures like that.
And we have some of them scattered, but not enough. And then I just took a lot of this information from the website for those of you who are on this call. And we'll have the link at the end so that you will have. But this program is similar to Fulbright, or at least they describe it as similar to Fulbright, in that it's a part-time teaching opportunity to teach English in Spain. It is with the government of Spain as opposed to the US government. Is that correct, Callie?
Yes, that's right.
That's what okay. And so you are there for the full, what they consider their full academic year. And you are essentially an English teaching assistant, which would be the term that Fulbright uses. That's not the term they use here. And later on, you receive your medical insurance and a stipend. And I'm going to have Callie talk about how far you stretch the stipend, because I don't know exactly about how that number of euros, how long that goes, or how far that goes, depending on where you are in Spain, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it depends. In Madrid, I know they give 1,000, and in Spain, in the rest of Spain, they give 700. But it depends on where you are, which that would be about a little more than $600, I think. And so where I was, it was plenty, because I was kind of in the farmlands. So.
Here are the eligibility criteria. So I do want to point out, when you send in your application, you have to submit your passport. So you do have to have a passport already. For those of you who might be thinking of applying for this and then thought, I'll get a passport when I find out, that is not the case. You would have to have your passport already. You have to have earned your degree. Most of people in our case, the people we're talking to, will have done that. There is also a section for an associate degree for a community college student. Have English or French as your first language, and that is, I think, primarily because they're recruiting from Canada and the US. And I think you can read these. They do have an age range. They are going to ask you to submit a medical evaluation when applying for the visa. And then I think I'll have Callie talk a little bit about this, where they talk about this open-minded and flexible attitude. What was your experience there, Callie?
Yeah, so that's for sure. The main thing is that it's a really independent program. And so a lot of these things you're going to be doing on your own. And flexibility wise, you can put your preferences for where you want to apply, but you might not be put there. So if I put like Madrid, Andalusia, and then Galicia or whatever, and let's say I apply late, I'm not like a qualified candidate, and they do give it to me, but there are other more qualified candidates or people who applied much earlier, then I might not get those top 3 choices. Now, odds are odds are I'll get one of those 3. That's usually what happens. But I think that's mainly what it is. I mean, you could put your preferences, but I have friends who taught in like little towns outside of the city and had to commute with other teachers. It's just, I guess they just mean that you can't exactly like expect, oh, I'm going to go to Barcelona and I'm going to be right in the city and I'm going to have all these ABCD, you know. It's you do have to be a little flexible and keep in mind that they have a lot of other teachers who they're trying to place, and you might not get like your top choice with things like that. But also just cultural flexibility in general, just knowing how to adapt to a different culture and learning the differences through experience, I think is a big thing.
And when you talk about the language, Callie, I know they say basic communication skills in Spanish are recommended, but I know your Spanish was much better than that when you went.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they recommend a basic level just because you're moving to Spain, you know, and so a lot of the things you'll be doing when you get there will be in Spanish. Like you have to go to the town hall to register for things and stuff, and obviously the people there probably don't speak English. And of course, if you don't, because it was confusing to do that, but your teacher can help you, like the person who is the coordinator between you and the school. Mine was like the English teacher there, and she also was a coordinator for this program. So she helped me with everything. And so they can help you and they speak English, but I would recommend a basic level. I knew people that went that didn't know any Spanish. I mean, like none, like no Spanish at all, which I thought was a very gutsy move, but they did fine and it wasn't a problem, you know, especially since you have the coordinators there who do speak English. You can reach out to them for any help you need. And then there's tons of resources like Facebook groups for the Auxes placed in a certain city. So there's an Aux Lugo group for me that I could talk to people who've been there a couple of years maybe about like what I need to do, other Americans. And so there's a lot of resources if you aren't confident in your Spanish. But again, they recommend the basic level just because you're going to be doing a lot of things that have to do with the Spanish language, you know, because it's Spain. So
I'll move on. And this is Callie in her classroom.
yeah, that's
and
that
also have a kidder somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, the picture's a little squished, but that's me eating octopus. Sorry, I don't know if you. It's like a big thing. I know. It's a big cultural thing. I was in the northwest above Portugal, and so they're really big on what they call pulpo, which is just octopus. And so that was like at a super local place where they cook pulpo and serve it every Wednesday. And so it was like in a little pueblo, like outside the city. So that was super fun. And then, oh yeah, there I am with my little students. They were 3rd through 6th grade, so they were super cute. And most of my classroom responsibilities were just like, it was a lot of helping. That's another thing I was going to say about this program is you are like a teaching assistant. So you won't be doing like lesson plans or planning how to teach these kids, you know, you're more of a supplemental person there. So the main teacher will have the lesson plans, the curriculums, exams, stuff like that, that's more technical. And then you will help by contributing essentially the culture. So I talked a lot about what it was like in America for me and what it was like growing up in the South. I grew up in Tennessee, and so being in the kind of the farmlands of Spain was very similar to being at my own house. And so I talked a lot about that, mainly just like making PowerPoints and then helping with games. So I was in elementary school, and that's a lot of what it was helping with games and helping with pronunciation and maybe occasionally making PowerPoints about American culture. But if you're in a high school, I imagine it would be a little more in depth, you know, like I have a friend who taught in a high school and she did more of like presentations on like political stuff or like, you know, things like that are a little more deep. But like I said, you'll be more of a supplemental teacher there. You're not going to be like the head teacher. And so you do have responsibilities, but it's not like you're just getting thrown into your own classroom and you don't have any resources or anything and you have to plan everything, you know.
Do you get to rank your preferences on age of student, or is that just random?
That's separate. I'm pretty sure you I'll need to look at the application. I think there is a spot where you can say if you have a preference.
Okay.
Or if you don't. I think there is. I might be wrong, but I think there is. Mhm.
So Callie, could you describe an average day in the life of I'm going to call it TA for want of not knowing exactly.
You could say an aux. That's what like people, because it's like,
Okay.
so people say aux. Yeah, so the hours are 12 to 16 hours. I had a school that was right in the city center, luckily. And so certain days I would finish early or get there late and I would just walk. It would be about a 25-minute walk. But most of the days my coordinator, she would pick me up because she drove right by where I lived. And so she would pick me up, take me to the school. And I would help with like 2 or 3 classes. It depended on the day. Some were more like 4 or 5, but I would help with those. Sometimes I would have about an hour break between classes and I would just sit in the teacher's lounge and maybe plan stuff. And then in the afternoons, a lot of times I gave private classes. So a lot of the students' parents will be looking for private English classes. And you can, like the coordinator, a lot of times will contact you about that. And so I would do private English classes in the afternoon sometimes. And yeah, but most of the time, so they finished school around 2. When my school finished, it was just finished at 2 and then we went home. Some of the schools out, like further out in the pueblos, like little towns in the outskirts, some of them would go more till like 5 and they would eat lunch there. And so it would start a little later. They would have like a lunch break and then they would go home around 4 or 5. And I had friends who did that and they just commuted with their teachers. Cause a lot of times people, if your school's like out in a pueblo or something, a lot of times people will live in the biggest city nearby. Cause it's just, I mean, you might not be teaching on Fridays either. Cause I didn't teach on Fridays. And so it's just better to live in the city where there's more people and it's easier to interact than to live closer to the school, you know? And so there were teachers that commuted from down like the city center. I say lightly, it's kind of a small city, but the city center of Lugo, and they would drive maybe 45 minutes out to the school. And so they would just give a ride to the auxes there. So yeah, it really depends. A lot of people will follow that rhythm though. A lot of people will follow the rhythm of like teaching at a school during the day and then giving private lessons in the afternoons.
I remember seeing something on the website that they have an orientation. Was that helpful? And what kind, was it an orientation to teaching or an orientation to Spain?
Yeah, good question. So in my region, we went and it was like a full day. Our teachers brought us. And it was in a city 2 hours away. And they talked about, it's hard to remember. They had, in mine at least, they had the president of the region there come and speak. They had someone who was there on a Fulbright speak about their experience. And then kind of outlined like the responsibilities we had as Aux teachers. And so things we should do, things we shouldn't do. Like, for example, you shouldn't be, like I said, you shouldn't be doing lesson planning. And some teachers don't get that, you know, like some of the coordinators even might try to push you to do more work than you're really there to do. And in those times you do have to kind of step up and say like, listen, I'm not here to lesson plan. I'm not here to like, you know, work with a curriculum or grade exams, things like that. So orientation covered a lot of that, a lot of the basics, like how long we would be there, how we would get paid, things we had to do when we got to the city, which involved registering with the police and like setting up a bank account and stuff like that. And so they covered a lot of that. It was just a lot of logistical stuff. It did help me and it was fun to like be there with all the other Americans and whatnot. But I will say they don't really cover anything that you can't find somewhere else. So it's not like if you miss it there, you won't know what's going on, you know? Did that answer the question?
I should ask, I think that some of our other participants may be muted, but you can unmute yourself if you have questions. Since we're a small group, I think people can ask their own questions instead of just in the chat function.
I don't have any questions right this second, but I will if I have some.
Wonderful. Thank you, Katie. Laura, are you the same?
Yes, I'm the same.
Okay. All right, great. And Callie, can you talk a little bit about how many people were there teaching that you got to meet? Who were the people that you hung out with on these long weekends that you got every week? Let me tell you how jealous I am of that.
Oh, it's the best.
So what was your life like outside of school?
It was great. Well, so I will say my situation was probably the most ideal you could have going into this program. I was very lucky because I texted my coordinator before I got there, and she basically was like, anything that you like need help with or anything like that, just let me know. And I texted her and said, could I live with Spanish roommates? And I asked her if she like knew of anyone who was looking for roommates essentially. And her daughters just happened to be in college there, like in the city nearby, and they knew people who were looking for roommates. And so I got really lucky with that because I lived with Spanish girls, like 2 Spanish girls who were studying nursing there. And so I spent most of my time with them and their friends. They immediately like invited me to everything and welcomed me in. And I was just like immediately part of their group. So that was super lucky. If that hadn't happened, there were a decent amount of other Americans. So Lugo is a pretty small place, it's like 100,000 people. But I want to say there were maybe 13 Americans. And then there were also people from England and like from like kind of Great Britain area. So there were some from like Scotland, England, and Wales. And so there were other English speakers that we could meet. And being in the Facebook group helped a lot with that because a lot of times they would organize kind of like trivia nights or a language exchange where everyone would go and practice their languages, people from all over and also local Spanish people. And so the American friends that I met there at like the language exchange and everything. So yeah, it's a decent number. I mean, to be 12 of us in like a city that small, I was really surprised. I didn't expect there to be many other Americans in Lugo, Spain, you know, but that's a good way to meet people. Yeah, if I hadn't had those Spanish friends, I would have hung out with Americans that way. And I did hang out with a few of them on a regular basis. So there's different ways.
Wonderful. All right, I'm going to move on in the PowerPoint a little bit and let us talk about the application, and then we'll also have time at the end to come back and talk about the actual experience. I just wanted to mention to the students who are on the call and to other people who may watch this later that we are willing to help you in the Office of Nationally Competitive Awards. So we're happy to look at your cover letter. Callie's going to talk about that, and she seems to think it's not overly, you don't have to worry about it a great deal, but I still want students to put in a good cover letter. You also need a letter of recommendation. And I know I just put a little text there just to let you know, because of the situation that we're all in, where we're communicating online and we don't know exactly where anyone really is, I would say if you're applying to at the end of this month that you maybe go ahead and reach out to the faculty member now, you know, just to let them know that you're going to do this, because I don't know what people's individual circumstances are or if they have kids in their house, and so it's harder for them to get things done. And so I think to the extent that you can, I would give people as much time as possible. And then also, in addition to this, these are the things that you add, but there's also apparently an extensive application online where you put most of the contents of your resume, or that's what I understood from reading through the materials on the website. Is that what would you agree to that, Callie, or could you discuss the application?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so yeah, there's a lot of resources on the website, and there's even a link that has like the informational, like it explains how to fill out the application itself. It's on like a different portal called Profex. And it outlines it pretty well there. I'll also say there are a lot of blogs from people who have done this in previous years. And so if you literally just Google like Auxiliares de Conversación like blog, then there's a lot of people that will outline really detailed ways and kind of what their experience was filling that out.
Okay, and I did look at one of those. I didn't see as much information on the application, but I guess some of those blogs vary then.
Yeah, some of them will some of them don't, but some of them will outline like, this is where you put this is where you put this.
Okay.
Apart from that, on the homepage, there is a link that says like basically how to fill it out, and it'll outline every single part that you have to do.
And I did look at the accompanying document that goes with, and it does seem like it's very complete, and that you have a little YouTube video or something where you can follow on. And then this short essay that you do, or the cover letter that they call it, I think it's very short, right? 300 words or something?
Yeah, it's pretty short. Yeah, 300 words is very doable. Just make sure you talk about what you're most qualified, like why you think you're most qualified and why you want to do it. Like you said, they're searching for a lot of what Fulbright searches for, kind of that desire to like have a cultural exchange and teach others about your culture while also learning about the Spanish culture. And so as long as you communicate that you have that drive, you'll be fine.
So I would encourage people to, when you start writing, then to, I'm happy to read over, but I would strongly encourage people to pretty much leave out the intro, because 300 words or whatever the essay is doesn't give you a lot of space to do the niceties, So I would go straight to the meat of what you think your qualification is, and why you think you're a strong candidate. And you will find out as you're filling out the application that you're going to be able to say your majors and all those kinds of things in the application. So I don't think you would necessarily need to turn around and give those again in your cover letter. So things that you fill out in the application, you would not need to repeat. This would be an opportunity where you would introduce yourself a little bit, not just the items on your resume.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so then, question, that is the website there, and we had to take out the hyperlink because it was not showing up well on the screen, but I could always send the link to any of you that wanted it. And also it's really easy to find online. I mean, teaching English in Spain, and it comes up. So other things, Kelly, that you would like for people to bear in mind, or other questions that Katie and Laura have about, or Emily?
Go ahead.
Sorry, Callie.
No, ask a question, please.
I applied like in February, I think. So I guess and they like sent me the email that says that I'm like admitida instead of like inscrita, which was fun and exciting. But I guess I'm just like nervous because we just don't know like what will happen for the fall. But I know Callie, I also know Callie like from other things. But so Callie had told me like you have until like August kind of to like say that you're not going to go. Is that like something separate than the thing in May? Because they say you have like 5 days to like say if you're going or not.
Right. So they'll tell you, basically you say they'll tell you what school you're going to next and like what your region is.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do have like is it 3 or 5 days? It's 5 days.
I think it's 5.
Yeah.
But I don't
5 days to basically email them and like confirm or decline. Obviously things change. And so it is flexible, and they are still telling people like about what cities they're placed into the summer. And so if something comes up, like for example, you get into grad school or something else was postponed, and then you find out you can go, and so you decide not to do the program, you can tell them in the summer, and it's not like a huge deal. You do have like 5 days to confirm or decline, but obviously they know it's a grant year. It's not, they know that plans change. And so if something happens where for whatever reason you can't go, just email them and let them know, because there are people waiting for spots too. So it's not like, and with stuff going on right now, it's pretty crazy. So I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens, but we know that things are kind of nuts right now. And so, I would also say later, so they'll tell you it'll go from inscrita to admitida, and then then you'll have that. And I would say make your appointment with your consulate as soon as possible, because they fill up so fast. Like I think I looked at mine in like June, and I was going to Houston, and I looked to pick a date, and it wasn't till like late August or something crazy. Because they fill up so fast. And so I would say maybe even look like today and set up an appointment online, because you can always cancel it. And then if they tell you your school and you decide to decline for whatever reason, you can just cancel that appointment that you have with your consulate. But
Okay.
and there's a list of which consulate goes with which state online. So just I would very strongly advise you do that really soon if possible.
And Katie or Callie, one of you, explain for those of us who didn't understand the terms, what will that mean when you go from one status to another? What do those mean?
Well, inscrita is just like when you send in your thing, they give you an inscrita number, and that's like mine was like 1,000. Mine was 1738 because I remember it because it's from the song, which is hilarious. But it was like 1,738, which means I was the 1,738th person to apply. And then they sent me, and that just means that I like submitted my application, and then they send you an email that's like, I think it's submitida is the second one, right?
Admitida, right?
Yeah, one of those. And they just send you an email, and it basically means that they like saw your application and like acknowledge that you have all of the like documents that you're supposed to have. And then I don't know what happens after that.
Okay, thank you.
And so that admitida, I will say, also basically means you are going to get placed somewhere. It's just they haven't placed you yet. And so they'll email those out all through the summer, like the placements. For example, my inscrita number is like 4,000 because I waited really late to do the application. So I'm like the 4,000th person. So I'll hear later than Katie will. Is basically what that means.
And they actually hire quite a number of these. I cannot remember from the website. Do you remember, Callie?
No, but I want to say it's around 4,000.
Okay.
I mean, my number, I was very late to the game this year because I didn't think I was going to have to do this. And so my number was like 4,300 something. But I know there are a lot of people that get accepted and then choose to do something else. And so I'm not really worried about, getting in. But I want to say it's 3,000 or 4,000 that they end up bringing.
And can you talk a little bit about the finances for somebody who's watching this later? You said it was enough for where you lived, right? Where you were in a smaller town. But what kinds of costs are people expected to pay? Your own rent, your own utilities, transportation? What kinds of things should people think about?
Good question. I would say save up before you get there. I think it's save up before you get there, because you won't get your first payment maybe for like a couple months, just because you have to set up your bank account. They have to get everything figured out essentially. So there'll be kind of a lag. I mean, you will get that payment, but it just might be a delay. So I've seen other people recommend you save up about $2,000 before heading there, just as like a good backup. You will have to pay the flights, unfortunately, and you will pay like rent, utilities. I mean, it depends on where you live, obviously. But because I've heard of people living with kind of a host family deal, and then they don't have to pay rent or whatever. I lived in just an apartment, so I had to pay like a down payment and then utilities and stuff. In my city, there was a bus, but it like was awful and everything was so close, so I just walked. But I did pay for like normal things like grocery stores, and stuff like that. I will say if you're further out, like if you're in Madrid, they pay you $1,000 because Madrid is really expensive, and so it's gonna cost, the cost of living is just more. If I had been in Madrid, Barcelona, even Sevilla, the cost of living is just higher. Whereas Lugo is kind of a place that it's just out in the sticks, so it's just cheaper. So I never had an issue with that, but I think that's a lot of why people recommend saving up before you go and then giving private classes in the afternoons as well, just for a little supplemental. But I mean, it's not like you're rolling in money, but it gets you by fine for the year, So.
Were you able to travel some on holiday breaks? And
I was able to travel. I stuck within Spain most of the time just because I figured I was living there. I should stay there. I don't know. And I haven't seen like the north before. And so I traveled a lot through the north and even with my roommates some because they were from neighboring cities. And then I actually came home for Christmas. You do get a Christmas break that's like 2 or 3 weeks. My school was really flexible. especially after I got to know them. And so they let me work a little more of the week. Like I had the last week, which was 3 weeks before Christmas, my last week of work. And I worked a little more of the week before that so that I could have that week off and travel with my cousins who came to Spain to visit. And so we did that and then went back for Christmas break for a couple weeks. And then on the way back, I went to Amsterdam with another friend and went to Paris a couple times. So it depends on where you are, because I had to take a bus to the nearest airport, which wasn't even like an international airport. So for the 3-day weekends, it's not like I could go flying anywhere because it just logistically was not feasible. But I could take buses to like around me, and the buses there are really good. They have trains. It's really good public transportation wise because they're not huge on driving really. So you got a lot of options with that.
So they don't cover your flight, but they do cover your medical insurance. And did all of that work out? Hopefully you didn't need it, but I mean, did it work if you needed an appointment or?
Yeah, I had friends that needed it and it worked out fine. And even I had to go to the doctor once after it expired because I was still hanging out in Spain afterwards. And even then it wasn't that expensive. I mean, their health system is really good. So their healthcare system. So.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Any other things that we should cover? Any questions that you guys have?
How was your process of moving in and finding an apartment? I mean, I know you said you found someone who was looking for a roommate, but just getting everything in check and being able to do so, how would that?
Right. So I got really lucky, but what most people do actually is they'll stay in like an Airbnb for like a week or two the first bit they get there. And then there's websites where you can look at apartments online. And you can either look, like some people lived with, maybe 2 Americans decided to live together and they just looked online at apartments for 2 and just rented them out together. And then during their first week or second week went in and saw the apartments and then signed them. Other people I know wanted to live with Spanish people and didn't have that connection that I had. And they decided to just, like, they stayed in the Airbnb for a week or 2 and just went around looking at apartments. You can look online. You can also put on like certain websites, you can put that you're looking for a room. And that basically means that you can have like other roommates who already live there and you just move in. And so that's what people tend to do is like wait till they get there, because you want to see the apartment before you just decide to move in, you know. And so a lot of people will do that.
And all of these were furnished units, Callie? You didn't have to provide furniture?
So my roommates found it, but people who had to look for them for the apartments, they ended up looking for furnished places. I mean, you can find places that aren't furnished if you want, but there's like a setting on a lot of the apartment websites where you can put like that you want pre-furnished or like just a room or the whole apartment, stuff like that. So there's a lot of options there.
And so they allowed you to stay after the end of the teaching thing. Sometimes these programs will have very strict guidelines about, you know, because you're on a certain type of visa and you have to leave within a week or a couple of weeks after you finish. But it sounds like you might have been able to stay a little longer than that. Right.
Yeah. So the visa, which mine, it was a whole thing. Technically it goes through the end of the program, the visa does. And so through May, whatever day of May it is, the 30th or whatever. But you do get 90 days because it's in the Schengen zone. So you get 90 days to be in the Schengen zone, basically in Europe, on like a visitor's visa. So I was only there through June, but there are people that'll stay the whole summer. I mean, they're not getting paid or anything, you know, it's like the program ends, but it's not like, I mean, you bought your flight. It's not like they're going to kick you out, and your visa is, even when it runs out, you still have 90 days after that to be in the country, you know. Yeah. Did that answer that question?
Yes. And I know that you didn't renew because you had another plan originally in mind, but could someone, if they're there for a year, could they renew for a second year while they're there?
They could. The only tricky part is that you have to be in the States to to apply for the visa in the consulate. So that's the only part that's a little confusing. A lot of people that I know, like the people that renewed at least, The application is very similar. You like open your same profile and just say you taught the year before and you're renewing. And you have to tell your school when you're there that you want to renew. There's like a certain deadline date. So for example, last year, if I hadn't got the Fulbright and I decided to stay in Spain, I would have just told my teacher like, yeah, tell them I'm going to renew. And she fills that out like my coordinator does. And then I would fill out my side of the application and put that at, like put the same region as my preference, and they would see that the school wanted me back a second year. The only thing, like I said, is that you have to come back to the States to do the visa process and like go through the consulate again, I'm pretty sure. So.
Thank you. I have learned a lot from this, Callie. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Questions? Anyone else? Any questions or questions you think that we should ask for other people? We have several people who've asked that we send the video to them. So is there anything that you guys feel like we've left out that we should ask?
Yeah. How was your studies affected by doing this program in Spain? Like your studies at UK?
What do you mean? Like,
did you continue, like, did you take classes in Spain or did you just stop for the whole year?
oh no, so I graduated and then went there. You have to have your bachelor's to apply. So most people will apply like during their senior year and then graduate and then go. But I do know of people who have done this program and then done grad school. They just applied when they were in Spain, like there. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you can apply as a senior without your BA, but then you have to have it, you have to finish, I guess, in May. Could you have finished in August and go? I don't know. We'd have to look at the website to be sure.
We would have to look. There's a certain date.
Yeah.
I think they mentioned a certain date on there about when you have to have it by.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What was your biggest surprise about their education system?
The kids are just so loud. That was honestly my biggest surprise was how loud they were. I don't know why I'm surprised because Spanish people can be really loud, but they were just so loud and just talked a lot. It was like different, like, I don't know how to explain it. Like there would be a low murmur over the class. And I feel like here the teacher would be like, whoa, who's talking, you know? But there they just kind of let it happen. I don't know. And so it was mainly that. But it was, and then the lunch schedule is weird. Like they eat lunch at 2:30 or 2 every day. It's like, and then dinner's at like 10. It's super bizarre. But I had already studied in Spain, so I knew those things. It was just weird that their day was like based around those things, you know?
Right.
So, but education system wise, yeah, it was mainly that. It's just different. The kids are just loud, but.
And obviously there's going to be a period of adjustment for anybody moving to another country and starting this kind of role. But anything that maybe that was disappointing that if you had known in advance you could have prepared for, or is there a way that you would tell people to prepare to get off on the right foot in an experience like this?
That's a tough question. Because I had a really good situation. I was like super lucky.
So when you say that though, it sounds like maybe some people didn't have as good a situation. Is that what you?
That's okay. Yeah, I will say that. I will say it depends. It depends because some people like maybe something happened where their coordinator expected more work from them and they were having to like do lesson plans, which I told them like just tell them you're not supposed to. It's in the contract, you know. Or like maybe they didn't have a great relationship with their school and like stuff like that, or maybe their living situation was bad, you know. And I think those people didn't have as good of a time maybe. But I don't know. I kind of live by like, it is what you make it, you know? Like, I don't know if their teachers are making them do more work, I'm like, well, tell them it's in your contract. It's literally right there in their contract, you know? Or like, if they don't like their living situation, it's like, I don't know, you have other options. So I would say maybe go, like just making sure you save up that money before you go to cover the first few months. Because I was a little surprised by, people had said that, but I was a little surprised by how the payment came a little later, and there were other expenses I hadn't really thought about before, you know.
That's an excellent point. So in addition, that's money in addition to being able to buy your ticket, right?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, for sure.
Separate. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. All right.
But ultimately, it is what you make it. You might not be in like your favorite city, but you're still going to be in Spain. And even if it's a small city, you're going to get more of the authentic culture anyways. So yeah, I think it's really just kind of putting yourself out there is what's important. and being flexible, realizing it's not going to be what you expect, probably.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Callie. I really appreciate that you were willing to do this for us. And thank you, Laura and Katie, for coming so that Callie didn't just have to talk to me and Emily. I'm sure that made it much better. And Katie, please keep us updated about your results and if you decide to go, and
Yeah, for sure.
we can congratulate you. And so we know if we have another alum there in Spain,
Yeah.
do another one of these. Although I assume we won't be Zooming forever, but we don't know when we will not.
Hopefully not forever.
These kinds of events. So thank you all. I really appreciate your time. It was good to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, Callie.